So I have a story that I wrote when I was a kid. I wrote this, I think in 5th or 6th grade. It's the first story I ever wrote, like completely wrote, you know, if you could call it that. I have not looked at this in about 6 years. So I waited until I started recording this video before looking at it. So this is me looking at it for the first time in a really long time. And well, there it is. That's how this is back in the day, folks, when there weren't any, you know, laptops or whatever. But oh man, just look at that. Look at that penmanship, man. I even drew a little picture. I didn't realize this was so long, so I might not get through all this, and there might be like a part 2 or something. Here we go. Birds in the sycamore tree. Once there was a girl named Betsy. Oh yeah, I put my own name in it, by the way. It's like before there was fan fiction. This was like fan fiction, I guess, because I put myself in the story, and I'm pretty sure I used a boy's name that I had a crush on at the time or something like that. Either way. Shall we? Once there was a girl named Betsy. Betsy loved to sit by the park pond and feed the fish and ducks. One day as she was throwing breadcrumbs to the ducks, she saw a boy walking towards her and she said, "Hello." The boy smiled and said, "May I sit with you?" And Betsy said, "Yes, you may." Then he sat on the grass with Betsy, and she gave him some breadcrumbs. As they were feeding the ducks, Betsy said, "My name is Betsy. What is yours?" The boy looked at Betsy and said, "Kevin." "That's a nice name," said Betsy. And all through the whole week, Betsy and Kevin met at the pond every day to sit and feed the fish and ducks and talk. Oh, God, I was boring. Ugh. You know what's crazy though? One of my friends would read this every time I made a chapter, and it was awesome because she loved it so much and she couldn't wait for me to write the next chapter. And it was just like instant gratification, man. I loved it. But this story sucks. One day, Kevin came to the pond and saw something he wished he didn't. He saw Betsy with a different boy. He saw them smiling together and talking. Kevin felt so crushed that he just went home. He just couldn't believe that Betsy would do that to him. I was queen of drama back in the day. Look at his sad demeanor. And me just sitting with that other boy. The next day, Kevin went back to the pond, and once again he saw Betsy and that other boy. But this time, he saw the boy kiss Betsy on the cheek. He just couldn't bear to see it. Him and Betsy were so great together, and now he finds out that she is doing something like this. This time Kevin goes over to them, pulls the other boy up, and pushes the boy to the ground. Just then Betsy gets up and walks over to Kevin. "Kevin, what are you doing here? You tell me, who is this guy? And why did you do this to me?" Kevin said to her. "He was a dare." "I'm really sorry, Kevin," answered Betsy. "A dare?" questioned Kevin. "Yes, some of my friends dared me to sit here with him yesterday and then kiss him today. I am so sorry. It wasn't for a real thing. I really want to be with you." Kevin didn't know what to say, so he just said the first thing that came to mind. "Oh, ... sorry." Then Kevin ran off as fast as he could. Then Betsy helped up the boy on the ground and said, "Sorry about all this, Chris. I'll see you later." And the boy walked off. Poor Chris, man. He was caught in the crossfire, just trying to have a good time. Betsy sat in the grass and looked at the pond. She felt so horrible. She should have told Kevin. Betsy laid back in the grass and looked up at the beautiful blue sky with white fluffy clouds. Then she drifted into sleep. When she awoke, it was still very beautiful out. Betsy looked to her right, and Kevin was laying there with her. That's a little creepy. She began to speak, but Kevin put up his hand and said, "Don't say anything. Just listen." So Betsy looked at the sky again and listened. She could hear the frogs singing in the pond, and she could feel the breeze washing over her face like an ocean. She could also hear birds in the sycamore tree. She felt so comfortable at that place. Betsy and Kevin laid there for several hours, just staring at the sky and listening. Just listening. Look, I even got a good job on it when my friends wrote good job. Chapter 2. Betsy stared at the little blue jays in her sycamore tree. She planted it in the park 5 years ago. It grew to be more beautiful than she had ever imagined. 5 years ago? Do you know how big that tree would be in 5 years? It'd be like a little sapling. I was so dumb. Betsy just turned 15 that day, and there was nowhere she would like to be more than to be at the park pond feeding the fish and ducks and watching her sycamore tree. Then she heard someone, a voice she loved to hear. "Betsy, Are you there? It was Kevin. Kevin just turned 16 2 weeks ago. I am here, Betsy answered to him. Kevin walked to her and sat in the grass. I got you something, Kevin told her. A big smile washed over Betsy's face. Washed over. God! As Kevin handed her an odd-shaped package wrapped in, oh my God. I put raped instead of wrapped. Kevin handed her an odd-shaped package wrapped in gold paper with a blue silk ribbon. She kissed him on the cheek and opened the package. Oh, thank you. It was just what I was wanting. It was a bird feeder to put in her sycamore tree. She was more happier than ever. I think I scratched that part out. She was happier than ever. They walked to her sycamore tree and put up the bird feeder. Just as they did, they heard the blue jays get even louder. Betsy and Kevin saw many of the jays go to the bird feeder as they walked away. Did it already have birdseed in it? He filled it ahead of time? Well, that's a nice boyfriend. Actually, are they even together? I never said. Betsy and Kevin became a very sweet couple 4 years ago. Oh, there we go. They are a couple. Though they weren't supposed to have boyfriends and girlfriends back then. Oh no, I stapled it too close. I can't even read it. God. They held hands as they walked through the, I'm assuming, grass. It was a very beautiful summer day, but sadly it was supposed to rain later that day. That didn't keep Betsy down though. Today was her birthday and she was very happy. Betsy and Kevin walked to her house and onto the white painted porch. Betsy motioned with her hand towards the porch swing that her mother put up that morning for Betsy's birthday. She got a porch swing for her birthday? I would have never thought of that. Cool. I mean, obviously I did think of it since I wrote this. They sat on the swing and talked. They talked about anything and everything. Then Kevin had to go home for supper, and Betsy too had to go in for supper soon. So then Betsy gave Kevin a big hug and thanked him for the present once more. Finally, she walked down the stairs and off down the sidewalk. Off down to the sidewalk? It's stapled together too closely. I can't read it. Betsy went inside of her house, and as soon as she opened the door, she felt heat all around the house. Really? I thought this was the shoe. I thought this was something special back in the day. And she smelled something wonderful. She stepped into the kitchen, saw her mother cooking many things. There was a big batch of bread rolls in the oven, creamed peas on the stove, an amazing vegetable beef stew on the stove. So repetitive. Lemonade in the fridge, some wine, just because it was a special occasion. Oh yeah, wine. And of course, her cake, that she wasn't supposed to see until later. After Betsy looked over her foods, she went upstairs to her room. She opened her window and sat on the windowsill. She watched as the beautiful blue sky turned gray and damp. She sat for a while, watching as the blue jays flew into the tree in her front yard. They were chirping away very furiously and flapping their wings. This is what happens when a storm is about to hit. Apparently. Soon she started feeling little tiny drops of rain on her face. How's she feeling that on her face? She did open her window. Maybe there's no screen. Minutes later, it was pouring down rain. Betsy closed the window and walked to her bed and laid down. She closed her eyes for a second, but opened them again. She got up and walked to her door. She walked out of her room and down the stairs. Betsy went out to the porch. She stood and looked at her yard for a few moments and then sat on the porch swing. She rocked back and forth and back and forth. If you have made it this far in this video, I commend you. Then she heard that lovely voice again, Kevin. Betsy saw Kevin coming up to her house. Hi, Kevin, said Betsy. Kevin walked up to the porch and Betsy noticed that he didn't have an umbrella. Oh my gosh, Kevin, you don't have an umbrella. You get inside right now. Then Betsy rushed him inside and got him a towel. They sat on her bed as they talked. Why did you come over in the pouring rain? Betsy said in a sympathetic voice. Then Kevin put his hand on Betsy's. I wanted to see you. Betsy smiled and looked the other way to hide her red cheeks. You know what? For a 5th/6th grader, I think this is pretty good. She pulled her hand away slowly and stood up. Do you want to stay for supper? Kevin smiled and nodded. So innocent. They've been together 4 years and it doesn't even sound like they've kissed yet. Chapter 3. Sweet 16. Betsy was so glad she was 16 finally because she was allowed to go out on a car date. Betsy had been with Kevin for 5 years now. There was just something special about him. Kevin with his cool black hair. He had black hair. For some reason I was imagining him blonde. That almost came to his shoulders. Dang, I was obsessed with somebody that resembled Snape even back then. He had these beautiful green eyes that shimmered when he was happy or not. Why say that? He didn't talk much around other people, but he was quite a talker with Betsy. Strong by silent type. Okay. Kevin has always been 1 year older than Betsy. Yeah, I don't imagine that would change. But that didn't matter to her. He was the most wonderful person Betsy had ever known. Betsy sat down for breakfast as she kept thinking about her date with Kevin. Betsy, stop daydreaming and eat, Betsy's mother told her. Betsy ate very quickly so she could leave. After she was done, she got up and headed out the door. She walked down the street and through the park. She sat down by the fish and duck pond and talked to the ducks about everything. Then she heard someone right behind her say, "Are you going to talk to those ducks all day?" Kevin stood there smiling. Betsy leaped into his arms and gave him a kiss. They kissed finally. "Is our date still on tonight?" Betsy asked. "Of course," said Kevin. They sat in the grass for a moment and then they laid down and looked at the sky. Kevin put his arm around Betsy's shoulder and scooted her closer to his side. Betsy smiled and put her arm across his waist and laid her head on his chest. She closed her eyes after a while and fell asleep. When she woke up, she was in the arms of Kevin. He was carrying her back to her house. When they got back, Kevin laid Betsy on the porch swing and said, "I need to go now. I'll see you tonight. Bye." Kevin kissed her on her forehead and left. Betsy smiled and thought some more about the date tonight. She heard her mother call her in, so she got up off the porch swing and went inside. "What?" she answered back. "I'm sorry, Betsy, but you're going to have to cancel your date with Kevin." Betsy's mouth dropped open. "What? Why? We had no plans tonight," Betsy screamed. "I'm sorry, but you have to babysit for the Dwillers." Dwillers? Dwillers. "Can't they get someone else to do it?" Betsy asked. "No, I'm sorry." "This is so not fair," Betsy yelled. Then she stormed upstairs. She flopped down on her bed and thought about how she wanted to tell Kevin. She got up again and went out of her room. She went downstairs and left outside. She walked down the sidewalk and went through the park. She went to the pond and laid down in the grass. "Hi, Betsy." It was Kevin, but Betsy didn't answer. What's going on? Kevin came up to Betsy and sat in the grass next to her. "What's wrong?" Betsy sighed and said, "My mom said I have to babysit for the Dwillers tonight. It's not fair." "It's okay. We can go another time," Kevin smiled, but Betsy was still mad. "Oh, come on, Betsy." Betsy looked at him and squinted one eye. Then her frown turned into a grin. Then she said, "Okay, fine, we'll go on a different day." "I can help you with your babysitting if you want," Kevin asked. Betsy shrugged. "I just want to go to sleep right now." Why is she just sleeping and going to the park all the time? "Okay," Kevin answered. Then Betsy laid down in the grass and fell asleep. Kevin, too, had fallen asleep by her side right after she had. Kevin woke up and woke Betsy up. They walked to her house as Kevin told her bye and walked to his house. Betsy went inside and asked her mom when she was supposed to babysit. Her mom said 4 to 9. "But it's 4 right now," Betsy said. "Exactly. They're waiting in the living room right now." Betsy ran into the living room. The Dwillers were sitting on the couch. "I'm so sorry I'm late." "It's all right, dear," said Mrs. Dwiller. And with that, Mr. and Mrs. Dwiller left Betsy with their daughter Lillian. Betsy's mother left with the Dwillers as well. Where were they going? That's what I want to know. "So what do you want to eat, Lily?" Betsy asked. Lillian shrugged. "Want some grilled cheese and milk?" Lillian nodded. Betsy went to the kitchen as Lillian watched TV. She got out the bread, the cheese, the butter, a skillet, and she turned one of the kitchen stoves on. One of the kitchen stoves? Were there multiple stoves? She buttered 2 slices of bread and then put cheese on one of the slices on the non-buttered side. Then she put the other slice of bread on the cheese, with the buttered side facing up. Oh my god. I'm so descriptive. She took the sandwich and put it on the skillet. She took a spatula and flipped it, and flipped it. She kept flipping until Lillian's sandwich was done. Betsy put it on a plate and took it to Lillian. Then she went back and got her a glass of milk and brought it to her. They both sat and watched TV. Then Betsy heard a knock on the door. She was about to go answer it, but then she heard a harder knock. Then harder! She heard someone pounding on the door with something. It got louder and louder. She panicked and Lillian's face was white. Betsy looked out the window and saw a man in all black with a mask on. Betsy began to cry. "Oh my god! Lillian! Out the back door now and hurry!" They both ran out the back door and ran down the street. Lillian was sobbing her eyes out. They stopped to let Betsy use her cell phone. First, Betsy was going to call Kevin and tell him what happened. "You should call the police first." She started dialing the number when she heard Lillian scream. She dropped the phone and looked at Lily. Lillian was screaming and pointing behind Betsy. Betsy turned around and saw the man! She opened her mouth to scream, but nothing came out. And before she could do anything, the man hit Betsy across the face with an iron bar. Betsy fell to the ground and the man grabbed Lily and started to run off with her. Betsy tried to get up, but she was hurt too bad. She yelled Lillian's name, but then she went unconscious. While Betsy was laying on the ground, that man was running away with Lillian. Then the man got hit by someone and fell to the ground. It was Kevin! Yay, Kevin! Kevin grabbed Lillian, put her by his side. Then he totally beat the crap out of that man. Then he grabbed Lillian's hand and was starting to walk back to Betsy's when he saw Betsy laying on the ground. Kevin let go of Lillian's hand and ran to Betsy. Betsy! He ran to Betsy's side and lifted her head into his arms. Oh God! He picked her up in his arms and stood up. Then they walked back to Betsy's house. On the way there, Kevin was so scared for Betsy because she felt so limp and lifeless in his arms. When they got to the house, Kevin laid Betsy on the couch and put a pillow under her head. Then he called Betsy's mother and Lillian's parents. They all came over, and when Betsy's mother saw her, she wept and wept. Betsy slept all through that night. They didn't take her to the hospital? Betsy slept all through that night, and Kevin stayed by her side the whole time she was out. In the morning, Kevin brought up breakfast to her and set it on her dresser. He sat down by her and watched her sleep. Then he saw her open her eyes a little and say, "Kevin, are you there?" A tear rolled down his cheek, and he said, "Yes, this is me." Then he put his arms around her and said, "I thought you were never going to wake up again." He sobbed and sobbed in her arms. Betsy and Kevin sat and hugged for a very long time. Soon, they both went to sleep together because that's what they do, and dreamed about their long futures ahead of them. And I think that's a good place to stop because I literally have sweat almost pouring down my face, and we will read more of that another time. Oh my God, I'm so hot. I hope you enjoyed this first part of this story that I wrote a really long time ago. I didn't realize I wrote so much. I thought it was gonna be like a one video thing, but apparently it's gonna be split up into two. So that was Birds in the Sycamore Tree, chapters 1 through 3. If you enjoyed this, please let me know. Give it a like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed. I literally can't think of anything else right now because I'm sweating so profusely. Can you see the sweat glistening on my face? Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned for part 2.